Hello, I'm Andrew McKay of Remix here in Wasaga Beach, and today we're going to speak about astrology. Now, to the layman, that almost simply means daily horoscopes, you're going to win the lottery, or your star sign. I'm a Leo, so I'm fierce and brave. It's actually a proto-science. I've been doing some research on it, and we're fortunate enough in Wasaga Beach to have, as he refers to himself, your astrologer at large, which is michael.zizis. He's not in there. He's going to say hello. And he's going to actually explain more about this proto-science and give us some real life examples. He's told me some, and it's absolutely quite fascinating. So I've got an easy job today. I'm just going to enjoy the speaking, and I may interrupt a little bit, but I'm going to hand you over to Michael. Hey, Michael.
Hi there. Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate this.
Okay, well, if you can, do you want to start with I use the term proto-science as you explained it to me, and it's not a term I'd heard before. So maybe just in simple terms for all of us, explain the basis of astrology.
Absolutely. Astrology really began 9,000+ years ago when farmers, your ancestors, my ancestors, everyone's ancestors, started noticing that their crops to feed the village would prosper during a new moon when the moon would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if they planted seeds during that cycle, you fed the kids, you fed the village. Everyone got nice, fat, big, round, happy tummies. And they noticed that if you plant these seeds in the ground when the moon was decreasing in size or decaying, the crops would often fail, and the crops would get sickly and die, or they wouldn't germinate at all. And this, over many, perhaps hundreds of years, all these very smart people began to notice, oh, let's make it easy. Let's not starve. Let's plant these seeds during a moon that's getting bigger. So that was the beginning of what we don't have today, which is a connection to the sky. Everyone's idea of looking at the sky is this right now.
Yeah, unfortunate. Everybody's idea of looking at anything. I find it horrific. You go to a concert or something, and the people are there, or a parade,
yes,
and people are looking at it through this. Sorry for interrupting. I see what you mean. Yeah, they're looking at the stars like that rather than like that.
Right. So astrologers tend to think the solar system exists on a piece of paper or a screen. So then they're actually in the same kind of group. So when we're looking at the sky, we're looking at a glance. But these original farmers, 9,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, they had much longer times to stare at things because their time wasn't hacked up and compressed and chopped up into finer and finer bits. So since the invention of the watch or the pocket watch, we're watching the compression, the fragmentation of time. So really, we're always running out of time in the 21st century, which is an odd paradox, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, because the time never runs out. So, yeah, very strange.
Yeah, so the issue around these people looking up and saying, oh, there's a big moon getting bigger and bigger, the crop will be resilient and healthy. Now, to carry on the same story of the mother of all the sciences, or proto-science, people would also notice every time Mars, the red planet, was the highest in the sky, war would break out. So Mars is the red planet of war. So this would happen all over Europe. It would happen in Native Canadian, Native American places. It would happen in South America. It would happen in the Far East. But when this red planet was the highest in the sky, it seems that the villages, the cities made war on each other. So very important to understand that we're just basically planting seeds as astrologers. And if you understand that we're planting seeds, you also understand that the mother of all the sciences of watching things change, grow, die, and be reborn, that's basically, the mother is called astrology. And 400 years ago, Galileo, Harvey, and other people began to look at things like the circulation of the blood and the rotation of the planets around the sun. And they began a cycle of sort of a teenager rebelling against the old parent. So the old parent would be astrology, and the teenager would say, look, you're an idiot, you know nothing. So that's how the teenager got to rebel against the old parent. So we're not in astrologer's not in conflict with science. We love it, but science seems to be a place where you smash things to find out what's going on. If you want to know how, what makes a bird sing, you cut its throat open. So the word science means to break apart. So that's why I'm sort of in the camp that says astrology can't be science because we don't break anything apart.
No, no. It just is.
Yeah, it just, you know, these cycles repeat. So people are born, they go through teenage years and get bigger and bigger. They grow up, they have a family, they have a summer, they have a spring, they have a fall of their lives, and they have a winter. And that seems to resemble how the moon gets bigger and smaller, and how the planets get closer and farther away, and how they keep changing. So when Saturn was highest in the sky, these same people would say, oh, last 19 times Saturn got highest in the sky, famine broke out, scarcity broke out, the wells dried up. So I have an idea, we have an idea. Let's put all the grain in silos, in barns, in protected places. So the next time Saturn gets highest in the sky, we're protected. Let's store water somewhere. So essentially what I'm saying is this is an observation of brilliant minds over literally 1,000+ years or more.
And it was recorded 1,000 years ago somewhere. There's
9,000 years ago. The Babylonians began to write this down. The Egyptians began to watch the cycles of the Nile. And then the Greeks, who invented nothing but improved everything, made it a codified system. So my astrology is based on the 4 seasons. I know it's a Catholic signature I just gave you, but the 4 seasons are the 4 cardinal points: spring, summer, fall, winter, and then back to spring again. First day of spring is the first day of Aries. First day of summer is the first day of Cancer. First day of fall would be first day of Libra, or the balance of things. And the first day of winter would be the first day of Capricorn, the beginning of the light returning. So that's called tropical astrology, which is what I practice.
And so the 12 months aren't necessarily a man-made invention. There's a proto-science before it, because you've got the 4 points,
yes,
and the 3 months in between, whether it's the cycles of the moon or something.
Right. So the Babylonians wanted a number that would be easily divided by every other smaller number. So they chose 360.
Right, yeah.
And they chose 12 hours for a day, right? Because 12 and 360 go together so nicely, as do so many other numbers with 360. So that's basically how the number 360 to 365, or the circle, got started. And the 12 seasons, the 12 signs, were basically, these actually are more ancient than farming. For instance, when we were in the Neolithic period, people would notice that as the winter was thawing, Europeans would notice as the winter was thawing, animals with horns would return to be hunted. That would be called the spring. So you'll notice that the first signs of the zodiac, the ram, Aries, and the bull, Taurus, have horns. So that's the beginning of spring, older than farming.
Right. And obviously, I'm not saying it's simplistic, but you've explained it very well. But for farmers, the moon gets bigger, we plant, certain stars, planets are high. But then it drills down to individuals. When did the leap occur between maybe the macro view of it, farming, we farm when the moon is big, just being very simplistic, to being able to deal with individuals, use astrology, that I presume is just a science, proto-science of progress, but that's quite a big leap.
Excellent point. Very good point. So when Jupiter would be highest in the sky, the king would do very well. The king would prosper. So Jupiter was called the king of the planets, right? Biggest planet. So when he would do very well and prosper, he'd say, so listen, you seer, you people who look into all these planets, when is this going to happen again? So the king would want to know, can I marry the daughter in the next kingdom? Can I merge our kingdoms? What's a good time to do that? Well, these astrologers, these seers, the magi, which is the Persian word for astrologer.
And how do you spell that?
M-A-J-I or M-A-G-I.
Oh,
You remember the manger and
yeah.
Jesus and the wise men?
Yeah.
So they were the magi, which means astrologer in Persian. Okay.
Ah,
So to get back to the king would say, when is a good time for me to marry the next kingdom's daughter? When is a good time for me to negotiate peace and trade? And these people, like the magi, would say, oh yeah, Jupiter's highest in the sky. Everything will go really well. Saturn's highest in the sky. Don't just build walls around your borders and hope we don't starve.
right.
So it's the king would notice this, and he'd have his court astrologers, magi, and then the magi would be, talk to the duke, and then the magi would talk to the horsemen, the equites, the knights, and gradually it's trickling down as people's income rose. More and more people would talk to these astrologers, seers, and say, what's up for me? So gradually, and this really is the advent of newspaper, we began to look at the idea that we're popularizing astrology. So astrology started off with kingship,
Yeah.
and then gradually, as a democratic principle, it's filtered down to people who were the demos, the people.
Yeah.
So here you and I are talking about astrology, and usually when people are talking about astrology, they often refer to what we call as astrologers sun sign astrology. Like, I'm a Leo,
Yeah.
I'm a Scorpio, I'm a Virgo, and that's okay. It's a great doorway in. And personally, Andrew, I think the more astrology gets talked about, the better it is for all of us, even if it gets bashed around. So the issue around astrology is now what we call sun sign astrology, and your sun represents everyone's sun sign, like Virgo, Gemini, Aquarius, Pisces, represents how we are learning empowerment in this life.
Right. Because the reason I wanted to talk to you, I think there's a big disconnect between how I introduced it. We all know our star signs very simplistically, and some people may read their daily horoscopes, but that's it. But then with some of the stuff you've told me, very intricate, very detailed, predicting stuff for people. And that would have, if I've got this right, initially the king would have been the one who introduced that, because he knew that the stars affected the way he lived and could live.
And he could pay for it.
And he was the guinea pig. He was the starting ground zero, because he was the king.
Well, he's got power, he needs vision, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then it trickled down.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, with the newspapers, somehow it got dumbed down. I don't want to say that, but you know what I mean? It got popularized. I think when things have to be popular, the bar's lowered, and it's the lowest common denominator, and just having this is your star sign, this is your daily horoscope.
Yes.
Is how a lot of people see astrology, and that's it, which is a shame.
Well, it's in one sense, you can explain astrology very, very simply. Astrology is simply a language. It's a language. It's not magnetism. It's not mysterious forces from Pluto or Uranus or Neptune. It's not any of that. It's a language. So if anyone thinks of the idea that people stop their cars, hopefully, at a stop sign and a red light, the stop sign and the red light aren't doing anything. They're not making anyone stop. We agree on a symbol. That's astrology.
Ah, I'm with you. Yeah.
So when I emailed you, I wanted to make sure that I use a very concrete example. So in the early 2000s, my spouse, my wife, Patricia, got quite ill, deathly ill, around the spiraling down cycle of colitis that was basically nearly incurable after many years. She tried every alternative way of being helped. And then one day I was at the gym, and I was talking to one of my buddies who I knew from a first name basis. And Pat was walking by, the two of us, and she was in pain, walking like she was in pain at the gym. And he said to me, Mike, what's wrong with Pat? And I said, she has severe colitis. And Jeff said, do you know what I do for a living? And I said, Jeff, all I know about you is your first name. Even though we've been talking for almost a year, right? And he said, I'm the head of gastroenterology at St. Mike's. Send her to see me immediately. Now, That's an important point and quite magical and, borders on the weird. But what's even more astonishing is when I looked at what's called her progressed horoscope, I can see that the planet Mars, which is inflammation, redness, like cuts, bruises, and burns, getting closer to the planet Neptune, which is hard to diagnose problems. Mars also represents scalpels and sharp edges like swords and knives. And Neptune represents the mysteries of healing. Right. So when I saw these two planets coming together slowly, was a slower process than a transit called a progression. When I saw them coming together in her chart, I began to realize that the medicines were not going to work anymore. And then Jeff said to her, "You've tried everything. I really insist, or really hope you go under the knife, because I've got one of the best surgeons in North America." So there was all the symbols of Pat having this inflamed colon, and Neptune being hard to diagnose problems, and Mars saying, "Well, let's cut it out."
Right.
Let's cut it out. So Pat actually had a song go through her head when she was asking if this is the right step, and she was in tears, of course. And she heard the song saying something like, "Cut it out, cut it out, cut it out, cut it out." So what I want to make clear to people is that at some point, Mars slowly got past Neptune, and that was the surgery. And as Mars began to exit its influence with Neptune, she miraculously and happily got better. And now she can eat nails and go to the gym for hours at a time.
Right. And she looks great. She looks very fit and very, very well, definitely.
So we've got the mystery of healing, that's Neptune. We've got Mars, which is incisions, cuts, and scalpels, and things that have to do with sharp edges and removal inflamed tissue. So these are all symbols which are like stop signs and red lights and green lights. So
it's not, you could predict something was going to happen because you could see this coming together without knowing what Jeff's profession was. Mm-hmm. As Mars came closer, then you found out what just happened. It was almost preordained. I hate to use that word, but because of this happening, that's when Jeff appeared on the scene. At that point, you could have been in the gym half an hour earlier together, or missed each other.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. So Neptune represents mystery. In other words, things that are real that can't be measured. Now, it's mysterious to me how all that came about.
Yeah.
Right. So music can't be measured. That's sort of related to Neptune. Love can't be measured. That's related to Neptune. And healing can't be measured. That's related to Neptune. So we're talking about a planet that represents symbolically all the things that are not given over to rational or logical understanding.
Yep.
Like music and love and healing. So I just thought, that's one of many examples of what astrology can do. So to more or less answer the question that you posed, I was predicting a trend.
Right.
Not fortune telling. Some guy named Jeff, who was a Leo, right? I was seeing a trend happening. Okay. Like the weather person sees a trend happening, right? So I was seeing a trend towards destruction and decay, and then rebirth and healing.
And then going on, you were telling me briefly when we were speaking about the recession and the financial crisis of 2008, which I remember very well because I got my real estate license the day the Western economy went boom, like that in 2008. So I remember it very well. But you were saying you used astrology to advise clients or friends about the financial, but what could be happening. So I'm sure another concrete example people will find very interesting.
In 2000, the first crash of the 21st century, which happened in May, I advised all my clients in the stock market get out of tech by March or at latest April. And of course, by May, the tech industry completely fell apart. That's the beginning of a 19-year cycle. And every 19 3/4 years, this cycle repeats itself with a great, crazy, unfounded boom, a crash, and then a slow, practical, grounded recovery. So at the midpoint of that 19.5-year cycle was 2008. And that's when I advised my clients to get out of real estate. Well, actually 2007, because I said, there's another crash coming.
Yeah, which it did.
Now we're going into 2020, which is 19 3/4 years, 20 years after the year 2000. And we're going through another, notice how the stock market is beginning to act irrationally.
Yeah.
It's exactly mirrors what was going on in 1929, when the stock market was acting irrationally because of people's irrational hopes and their desperation to get rich quick. And what's going to happen when all this money from the government in North America and Europe is going to be cut off. Yeah. So people are panicking, and it's sending the market up into a mad spiral. So what will happen?
And how do you see that trend occurring with the stars? Is there certain planets or something?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm interrupting you because I'm so excited about my subject. Every 19.5 or 19 3/4 years, the planet Jupiter, which spins around the sun, catches up to a slower planet outside its orbit called Saturn, which spins around the sun. So it takes Jupiter 12 years to go around the sun once. It takes Saturn 28 years to do the same thing. So every 19 3/4 years, Jupiter, the faster moving planet, catches up to Saturn.
Yep.
So what happens is, and again, this is not because Jupiter and Saturn are making anything happen, but symbolically, the old king is overthrown by the new king. So we have a crazy bull market leading up to Jupiter catching up to Saturn, and then Saturn takes over and says, you know what, slow things down, let's make all the illusions destructive, so we have to become realistic again. This crash in 2020, which will start in December, January, will not be like 29, because they made all exactly the wrong moves then to make the crash prolonged, more difficult, and more tragic for people, because they shut the banks down and the money got frozen. This time there'll be liquidity and banks will stay open and shove money back into the system. So it will feel more like an adjustment, but I wouldn't exclude the idea that the adjustment won't be kind to people who are overly ungrounded and optimistic.
Right. Yeah.
This will be fine.
Okay. So if a client approaches you, do they tend to come with a specific problem or question that you then see what the trends are? Is that when you work with people, that is a specific thing they're trying to find out about?
Most often it's curiosity. So it can be, should I marry this person, right? Well, that's the question. It's very important to answer. When should I start a business, right? Well, I can help with it. When should I have surgery, right? So in the main, this is curiosity. And, it's not a specific issue. Now, if let's suppose I do a really good job for Andrew, and then Andrew tells someone else, and someone else is saying, oh, I'm just thinking of when will COVID be over? When can I start a business or go back to my business? Then they'll come with a specific set of questions. In the main, this is all about me having a client who doesn't know exactly what I do, but comes out feeling stronger and better and more reinforced in their journey, because I'm showing them not only their potential that may be hidden from them, but I'm showing them the hidden talents. I'm showing whether they're in a contraction or expansion cycle. I'm showing, I'm very happy to say, oh my God, I kept you from breaking your leg. I kept you from, going down the highway a whole month way too fast and getting into some fender bender or worse. So those trends become my purview, my vision quest. But the client really doesn't. It's not anyone's fault. This is a young culture. Everyone in Europe has an astrologer, but in our young culture, we associate what Michael does, what I do, with fortune telling. So I'm spending the first 20 minutes telling people why I'm not a fortune teller.
That's why I wanted to talk to you and get this out to people, because I knew, having spoken to you and met you before, you're an intelligent man. You don't deal with these things when it is fortune telling. So, but we do have to keep it fairly simplistic, because people are uneducated about it, and I am. So, and I presume we all have different trends and we're on a different path because of our birth dates or whatever.
Yes.
So that's why it's all individual. There may be an overriding trend that there's going to be a crash in the economy because of Saturn and Jupiter.
It will affect everyone, yes.
But you can look at somebody individually, and again, I'm being very simple. Your birth date is such and such, and so if the arc is like that of all the trends, you hit it here. Your birth date relates to where you are on the trend.
Your horoscope, which begins. This is a natal or birth horoscope, begins when you take your first breath.
Right.
That means that you're breathing in a frozen moment of where the planets were at the moment of your first breath. As Dylan Thomas would say, I first saw the light and screamed at it.
Right.
This moment of birth. Right. So when you do that, you're setting a pattern of a person is setting a pattern of literally the work they came to do in this life. Now, when I say work, I mean the work of love, trust, growth, exploring talents, being strong, being weak, failing, triumph. All those things are embedded in where the planets were symbolically, because it's a language, in their horoscope. So one of the wonderful things for me about astrology is it not only tells me the work I have to do in this life, it also tells me the work I don't have to do in this life. Mm-hmm. Always makes me happy.
Yeah. I can see that. Well, that's fascinating. And there's so much more to it. But I'll put the details in the comments. But if people want to contact you directly, and as I said, you're based in Wasaga Beach. You're our astrologer at large, but we've got you locally. So I think people should take advantage. Is there an email or somewhere that you'd like them to contact you through?
It's quite simple. Michael, MICHAEL, .zizis, ZIZIS, @Rogers.com. michael.zizis @Rogers.com.
Great. That's very simple, and I'll note it as well so people can. And I'd just like to say I've known Michael for a little while, and he's very, very approachable. You know, this could be a bit daunting, but I think a lot of people are really interested. But it's like a lot of things, because it is out of the norm nowadays, taking that first step. So he's very approachable. Just email him, have a chat. Hopefully you've learned something from this. And that's it. Okay. I'm going to go and look at my star sign and see what's happening. So anything you'd like to say to finish, Michael?
Yes. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.